Hi, I'm Odell. 2 weeks ago, my sister screamed at me in front of our parents. "You've ruined our lives." And they nodded like it was true. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out with nothing but my bag and silence. But this morning, I woke up to 14 missed calls. Now they say they need me. So, what changed? Before we dive in, what time are you listening to this, and where from? Drop a comment, because maybe you've been erased too, until they realized they needed the one they discarded. It was already dark outside, but the air inside the house felt even heavier. My sister, Seraphine, sat perfectly perched on the edge of the family's oversized cream sectional, her ring light glowing like a halo around her. She was finishing a live stream, something about hitting 50,000 followers on social media. My parents sat nearby, nodding along like she'd just gotten her PhD. I stood in the doorway between the kitchen and the living room, clutching a chipped mug of tea I'd reheated twice. My name hadn't been mentioned once in the past hour. That wasn't surprising. I had become an expert at blending into the background. Sometimes, I wondered if the walls noticed me more than they did. Then, it happened. The laptop screen flickered, and Seraphine's voice jumped half an octave. "Oh my God, not now." Her perfectly curated smile dropped. "Why does this always happen when you're around?" she snapped, her voice cutting across the room and slicing right through me. I blinked, stunned. "What? You stress me out just by breathing, Odell," she barked. "You throw off my vibe." I looked around, half expecting someone, anyone, to call that out for what it was ridiculous. But instead my mother stood up, brushing invisible lint off her lap. "She's not wrong," Verena said calmly. "Every time something good happens, you find a way to ruin it. You've ruined Baz, ruined her life. Honestly, you've ruined ours too." My father didn't say a word. He just rubbed the bridge of his nose, like this was all too familiar. Too exhausting. I felt the flush rise in my neck. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even defend myself. Instead, I turned around. I walked down the hall to the guest bedroom they'd begrudgingly let me use while I figured things out. The door barely closed without sticking. The carpet smelled faintly of dust and air freshener that had long expired. I moved quietly, robotically, stuffing a few essentials into a backpack I hadn't touched since college. I didn't pack anything sentimental, no framed photos, no cards, no letters. I'd stopped writing those years ago when I realized no one read them. 15 minutes later, I was out the door. No one asked where I was going. No one asked if I'd be back. The street was quiet. The kind of silence that follows the kind of fight where words hit harder than fists. I walked down 2 blocks to the gas station with the humming fluorescent lights. I bought a granola bar and a bottle of water, mostly out of habit, not hunger. I asked the clerk if the bus was still running. "Last one's in 8 minutes, if he's on time." He wasn't, but I waited anyway, sitting on the cold metal bench with my hands shoved in my coat pockets and my backpack between my legs, like a life raft. When the bus did show, I climbed on and didn't look back. The ride into downtown Charlotte felt longer than it was. I kept my head down, watching the city lights blur past like smudged paint. No one made eye contact. It was almost a comfort. When we reached the end of the line, I got off and walked a few blocks to a small beige motel with flickering neon signage. The kind of place you only go if you've run out of better options or better people. The man at the front desk didn't ask questions. He handed me a key with a number scratched off and rewritten in marker. "Cash or card?" he mumbled, eyes never leaving his reality show playing behind him. I handed over my last $42. The room smelled like old cigarettes and cleaning fluid that didn't quite mask anything. I dropped my backpack near the foot of the bed and sat on the edge of the mattress. It creaked beneath me, loud in the quiet. I didn't undress. I didn't cry. I just stared at the water stain in the ceiling above me. It looked like a broken heart or a burned-out star, depending on how you tilted your head. My phone sat face down on the nightstand. I hadn't heard a single buzz the entire time. No, where are you? No, come home. Nothing. And then, it vibrated, just once. I reached for it, half hopeful, half numb. A notification popped up. Reminder: unopened Mother's Day gift from Odell delivered 2 years ago. The box I'd mailed her, wrapped in tissue paper, a pair of silk handkerchiefs with her initials. I had them monogrammed. She never opened it. They never opened me. The next morning, I was up before the sun finished rising. I counted what I had left: $2.70 and some change. No job, no home. But something about that note made the math feel less like a countdown and more like a challenge. I walked toward downtown. My feet ached before I reached the corner gas station, but I kept going. A little cafe near the bus depot opened early and had a small chalkboard sign out front: free Wi-Fi, coffee refills all day. That was all I needed. Inside, it smelled like burnt toast and floor cleaner. I ordered the smallest coffee on the menu, $1.75, and took the seat closest to the outlet. I pulled out my phone and logged into a few freelance tutoring platforms I had bookmarked years ago but never used. One of them still had an old profile saved. I updated it, specializing in SAT and ACT prep, writing support, study planning, patient, reliable. Under About Me, I wrote, I believe in showing up, even when no one else does. By noon, I had applied to 16 listings. Parents desperate for help with test scores. Students overwhelmed by college pressure. People I could understand in ways my own family never tried to understand me. Halfway through the 5th application, I paused. The words, reliable, compassionate listener, stared back at me from the bio section. I remembered Grandma's voice. You were always the one who listened. She used to say that when I sat at her feet during Sunday dinners. While everyone else talked over one another, she saw something. Not flashy, not loud, but something real. I swallowed hard, thinking back to the funeral. We were standing in the reception hall, surrounded by polite people with bad coleslaw. A family friend I barely knew leaned in gently and said, Your grandmother's second letter was beautiful. I hope it brought you peace. Second letter. I blinked at her. I only got one. Her face fell, confused. Oh, I must have been mistaken. And she said, She wrote you another 8 months before she passed. I'm sure it got to you. But it never did. And when I asked my mother about it, 3 days after the funeral, still trying to give her the benefit of the doubt, she didn't even blink. Oh, it wasn't anything important. Just sweet old lady things. Just sweet old lady things. That letter, too, had been erased. Like I had been. A pattern so long and subtle, you don't notice it until you wake up one day and realize all your edges have been sanded down by people who said they loved you. I shook the memory off and refocused on my applications. A ding came in. One parent responded, then another. By the end of the week, I had 3 clients, 2 high schoolers, and 1 adult learner prepping for a GED. The library 2 blocks from the cafe allowed guests to borrow Chromebooks for online sessions. I booked 2-hour slots every afternoon and used them like my life depended on it, because it did. The pay wasn't much, but every dollar felt earned. And the students, they listened. They asked questions. They said, thank you. One girl, named Riley, said during our second session, You're the only person who's explained this in a way that makes sense. It felt strange, being seen by strangers in ways I'd never been seen at home. That evening, I returned to the motel and recorded my income on the back of the same receipt from when I checked in. I wrote down the tutoring hours, the payments I'd received on PayPal, and how much I could afford to spend next 2 more nights. I looked around that tiny room. It smelled faintly of bleach and damp curtains, but it was mine for now, and that was enough. For the first time in years, I felt the slightest thread of pride uncoil in my chest. They never noticed what I was building, I said aloud, to no one, because they never thought I could. It wasn't just bitterness. It was clarity, cold and clean. I lay down, still wearing my jeans. too wired to sleep. The motel buzzed with faint conversations through the wall and the whir of a vending machine outside. Just as I was about to put my phone on silent, a post popped up on my feed. Family is who shows up when it matters. Don't ever forget that. It was Seraphine's caption. Her face gleamed next to our mother, both holding glasses of something bubbly. I barely registered the fake smiles before my eyes locked onto something behind them, a photo on the wall, the family portrait, but I wasn't in it. I stared at the photo, my thumb instinctively zooming in, my eyes locked on the familiar hallway wall, same textured beige, same soft shadow from the hallway lamp. But the frame was different. Gone was the old family portrait we took when I was 16, back when everyone still pretended I belonged. In its place, a glossy new photo, Seraphine in the center, of course. Mom on one side, beaming in her cream cardigan. Dad stiff but smiling as if coached. Even the dog, Sprout, the golden retriever they got after I moved out, sat proudly in front. It looked like a campaign ad for some Hallmark version of our family. Only, I wasn't in it. Not a mention, not a trace, just a clean, cheerful slice of life, trimmed to remove the messy parts. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would, but all I felt was a slow, rising heat in my chest. Not sadness, not quite rage either. Something quieter, heavier, like watching someone throw away a letter before reading it and realizing it was yours. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, the phone still glowing in my hand. A few years back, I might have told myself they probably just needed a smaller frame, or maybe they didn't realize I'd notice, but not this time. This wasn't an accident. It was official. I'd been erased, not metaphorically, not emotionally, physically. I scrolled back to other photos on Seraphine's page. Throwback to the good old days. Family dinner last Sunday. Grateful for my tribe. There I was, always barely in frame or cropped out entirely. And now I was just gone. A wave of memory pulled me under. I was 9, standing on a stool so I wouldn't be too short for the group photo at church. Everyone laughed when Seraphine joked, "Odellen always looks like she photobombed us." That time, Mom did defend me, kind of. She said, "She's just shy, that's all." But they moved me to the end of the lineup anyway. Out of frame was easier. I blinked away the memory and reached for my tote bag, needing to distract myself. I began organizing my tutoring inquiries, replying to students, filtering messages. It was busy work until I opened the spam folder. There it was, a subject line I nearly missed. Refamily podcast opportunity, sent by Seraphine. I had been CC'd. My stomach clenched. I opened it. A short, professional note to a PR rep, pitching an episode featuring modern family dynamics through the lens of resilience and social media influence. And then, at the bottom, my sister. She's just bitter and emotionally unstable. We don't talk for a reason. I don't want her involved. It's taken years to rebuild the family's image. My hand tightened around the phone. I could hear the ringing in my ears. I reread the line 3 times, each word louder than the last. Bitter, unstable, rebuild. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, I took a screenshot, then another. Then, I printed the email from the library the next morning and taped it on the motel wall, right next to Grandma's letter. The words so sat side by side, like a before and after. One believed I could build. The other believed I didn't matter enough to be seen. I grabbed a pen. On the motel notepad, I started mapping it all out: dates, comments, moments, the slow eraser, the dismissals, the behind-the-back insults that had finally come out in writing. It didn't feel petty anymore. It felt necessary. Later that week, a message popped up from a Dallas-based SAT prep group. They'd reviewed my profile and wanted to onboard me for virtual sessions, $75 per student, a number I hadn't seen in years. It meant I could stop living off dollar coffee and hope. I accepted the offer without celebration. No jumping, no smiling, just a steady kind of satisfaction, the kind that stays quiet because it doesn't need to be seen. By Friday evening, I had enough to put down for a small room in a shared apartment a few miles out. Not a palace, but something with a door that locked and no blinking neon sign outside. I sat on the bed, tracing the edge of the email with my thumb. I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. There's a difference. A knock on the motel door startled me, sharp, hesitant. I stood slowly and opened it. There she was, Mileus, my former best friend. Her face looked thinner, tired. She clutched something in her hands, something wrapped in an old dish towel, like it had been hidden. Odin, she said softly. They told me you were in trouble. I didn't believe them until I saw this. I stepped aside to let Mileus in, and she hesitated, like she didn't belong, like crossing that threshold meant betraying someone. She held out a small envelope, the kind I used to buy in bulk from that stationery shop near the library. My name was written on it in my own handwriting, soft, rounded letters I hadn't used in months. My chest tightened. It's still sealed, she whispered. Odell, I found it in your mom's desk, under a stack of expired coupons. I didn't reach for it right away. I just stared. I wasn't snooping, she said, setting it gently on the little table by the microwave. I was dropping off something for Seraphine. Verena had me waiting in the kitchen, and it was sitting there, like it meant nothing. I finally picked it up. The envelope hadn't been torn or wrinkled. It looked exactly like it did when I walked it to the mailbox last year, my mother's birthday. I'd saved up for weeks just to load a gift card to her favorite cafe and wrote a letter inside about second chances, about trying again, about maybe healing. She never opened it. Mila sat down across from me. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say more but didn't. I slid a fingernail under the flap. The paper peeled back without resistance. I pulled out the card, and the note unfolded. The soft pink sheet. Mom, if there's still a space in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything, just a call back. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you. Love, Odell. I read it twice. Then, I folded it back. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Even the words I sent them didn't matter. Not enough to open. Not even enough to throw away. Just tucked under coupons and forgotten, like a scratch-off that didn't win. Mileus finally spoke. That wasn't all I found. She reached into her tote and slid a few printed pages across the table. Seraphine's new site, the Success Academy, or whatever she's calling it. I used to help you build this stuff. Remember, I'd know your voice anywhere. I scanned the first page, then the next. My breath caught. She'd lifted it, all the intro text, the diagnostic rubric I'd spent months refining, even my diagrams, the same layout, same color palette, only now it was under Seraphine's name, her photos, her brand. She said you gave it to her. Mila added quickly. I knew that was a lie. I laughed, one of those short, breathless sounds that die before they reach your throat. Even my sidebars, I muttered. Even the section headers. My voice shook, but I stayed still, like movement would let the betrayal crack wider. Mila sat quietly while I took it in. A few hours later, she left, hugging me tightly, then slipping out the door with tears in her eyes. The room was quiet again. I sat on the floor, my back against the cheap, wood-paneled wall. No music, no TV, just the hum of the mini fridge and the occasional creak of the pipes. Then came the buzz. The phone screen lit up. Missed call, Dad. Then another, and another. I watched as the count ticked up to 14. Voicemails followed. I didn't listen at first, but curiosity peeled me open just enough. The last one was from my father. His voice was weary. Odellin, your sister's getting dragged all over the internet. Some blog picked up the story. They're calling it plagiarism. People are mad. She's saying you're lying, but we need your help to calm it down. She's not handling it well. No apology, no acknowledgement, just the usual pattern. We need you when it burns. I didn't answer. I didn't even text back. I just sat there, phone on my lap, screen still lit, then dark, then lit again. The buzz felt like a mosquito at the edge of sleep, persistent, nagging, never letting up. They only ever call, I whispered to the silence. When I can fix what they broke, my arms felt heavy. I leaned forward, resting my forehead on my knees. I hadn't cried yet, but this wasn't tears. This was something slower, sadder. I opened my laptop, hovered over my folder marked Curriculum Archive. My finger tapped the delete key. Maybe I should just let it go, erase it all, like they tried to erase me. But then, I noticed something, a folder I hadn't touched in years. Grandma, legal. I clicked. Inside was a scan I barely remembered uploading. An image file labeled Will O'Dellon. I opened it. There it was, clear as day. My grandmother's signature, her handwriting. A clause stating that I, Odell Shipley, was the sole recipient of her educational materials, all her curriculum, tutoring designs, and teaching frameworks. I was the legal heir to the very work Seraphine had stolen, and it had been scanned 4 years ago, hidden ever since. The next morning, the weight of that scanned file hadn't faded. I stared at it while the sun crept through the dusty blinds of my small apartment, illuminating the edges of my computer screen like it was some kind of divine spotlight. The words were there, bold and formal, stamped and signed in my grandmother's careful pen. All intellectual property and preparatory curriculum, created or co-developed with Odell Shipley, shall remain under her sole name. She had protected me, quietly, legally, and my mother had ignored it completely. As I sipped lukewarm coffee from a chipped mug, my phone buzzed again, another voicemail, the second that morning. I didn't want to hear it, but my thumb hovered over the play button. Anyway, I was already spiraling. What's one more turn? Verina's voice came through, softer this time. Oh, Dellon, please. You can't just let the family fall apart. Your sister's career is hanging by a thread, she said. The family, but I knew what she meant. Them, the ones who replaced my face in pictures. The ones who left my envelope in a drawer, like a piece of trash. Then another voicemail, this one from Seraphine. Her voice cracked with panic. You're just bitter. You're always bitter. We gave you everything. And this is how you repay us. I could almost see her pacing around in some pristine room, mascara trailing down her cheeks, blaming me like she always did. We gave you everything, she said. What a joke, I whispered into the silence. You erased me and still expect me to be your savior. My hands were steady as I printed the will. No drama, no tears, just clarity. I pinned it to the wall next to the email screenshot and the faded note from Grandma. One was typed, one was printed, one was written by hand. All of them told the same story. I'd been erased, and now they were demanding I paint myself back in, just to fix their mess. I stared at that wall for a long time. By lunch, I'd made up my mind. I looked up a lawyer in Austin who specialized in intellectual property and quietly booked a consultation. When I arrived, I brought the printout in a calm voice. I'm not asking to sue, I told her. Not yet. I just want this documented, verified, and publicly filed. I want ownership to be formal and known. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s, named Margot, raised an eyebrow after reading the will. You don't need a lawsuit to take back what's yours, she said, tapping the page. You just need a notice. I left her office with paperwork in hand, sunlight warming my back, and something inside me I hadn't felt in years control. But peace, that didn't last long. That night, there was a knock. 3 raps, firm, familiar. I looked through the peephole and nearly stepped back in disbelief. Verena, Gareth, and Seraphine. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. We stood in the narrow hallway. The air felt sharp, like everything between us had hardened into glass, ready to shatter if anyone raised their voice. Verena looked exhausted. Her lipstick was faded. Her hands trembled. Gareth said nothing. He never did. Seraphine's eyeliner was smudged. Her curated shine was cracking, and she knew it. We made mistakes, Verena began, clasping her hands. We know, but family means forgiving. I didn't blink. No, I said softly. Family meant not burning my letters. It meant opening my envelope. It meant saying my name in your family appreciation posts. Verena looked down. I turned to Seraphine. She met my gaze like a child who'd been caught, but didn't know how to be sorry. This time, I told them, stepping back, I'm not the one fixing your mess. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I simply closed it with a click and turned the lock. Later that night, after showering off the tension and pouring myself some chamomile tea, I checked my email and froze. A bold red notification greeted me. Your professional site has been flagged and temporarily suspended due to multiple copyright violation claims. I clicked the details. Someone, an anonymous IP, had filed claims against my own curriculum. My stomach twisted. They'd come back for me, not with words, with paperwork. They tried to erase me one more time. But now, I was ready. By the time I opened my eyes, the sky outside was already a dull gray, one of those mornings where light feels more like pressure than promise. I reached for my phone automatically, expecting the usual overnight tutoring emails or calendar pings. Instead, the first thing I saw was a red flag banner on my screen. Your website has been temporarily suspended due to a reported copyright violation. I sat up, heart pounding, but hands steady. A second notification followed, then a third. The subject lines were nearly identical. Urgent copyright claim review, pending. At first, I thought it was some glitch or bot, but when I clicked through and saw the claim details, my blood went cold. Proprietary content in use without consent. There was no sender name, just an anonymized IP address tied to the complaint. But Margot, my attorney, was already ahead of me. Within the hour, she called. It traces back to Seraphine's branding agency, she said flatly. It's not a coincidence. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I took a breath, opened a new folder, and began. I took screenshots of every page, every time-stamped lesson, every outline, every diagram I'd created. I retrieved the PDF of my grandmother's will, highlighted the exact clause that secured the intellectual property. I even included early drafts I'd saved on a cloud backup, dated before Seraphine had even launched her academy. I wrote the counterclaim with the tone of someone who had nothing left to prove. I don't scream anymore. I typed to myself while organizing the files. I document. That same afternoon, I sent an email, not just to the board hosting my platform, but to all my tutoring clients and professional contacts. No dramatics, no accusations, just a clean, composed message. In light of recent confusion, please find attached original course materials, timestamps, development drafts, and my legal rights to the content as secured through notarized family documents. I appreciate your continued trust. A few replies rolled in within minutes. Most were supportive. A few expressed surprise, but one message stopped me cold. A parent I had worked with the previous fall. A single mom from Houston wrote, "Your course saved my daughter's future. Don't let them take this from you." That one, I printed. I placed it next to the will on my wall. One paper born of blood, one born of effort. Together, they meant something real. By evening, the storm had started brewing. This time, not mine. Seraphine posted a cryptic update on her main page. People love to take credit once the hard work's done. Funny how that works. But the internet wasn't buying it this time. Within the hour, someone, an intern she must have let go without a second thought, posted screenshots, timestamps, chat logs, even early Canva templates, all tied to me. All dating back years. The comment section beneath Seraphine's post turned fast. This looks like a textbook case of erasure. Wait, why is Odell not credited on anything? Y'all believe the family brand too easily. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Instead, I sat on my worn couch with a cup of peppermint tea, legs curled beneath me, laptop in my lap. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt still, strong. Then, just past 10 p.m., Margot called again. "Odell," she said cautiously, "I don't want you to panic." I paused, heartbeat slowing to a steady rhythm. Tell me. Seraphine's team just filed an emergency injunction. They're trying to block your site permanently. And, she hesitated, your name is now being dragged in a Reddit thread that's gaining serious traction. So, this was their last swing, not a conversation, not an apology, an ambush. I set down my mug carefully and looked at the papers on the wall. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was public. And now, it was war. The next morning, I didn't rush to check my inbox. I made coffee, let the kettle hiss and breathe. I took my time, cracking the window, letting in just enough cold air to feel awake. Only then did I open my laptop. The subject line was waiting. Formal injunction filed. Cease and desist, pending court review. Margot had warned me. Still, seeing it in black and white knocked something loose inside me. It wasn't just a challenge to my work. It was a move meant to bury me. Below the message was a copy of the injunction, my name, my course, my students, all temporarily frozen, almost simultaneously. A viral Reddit thread was passed to me. At first, I didn't click, but curiosity, or maybe defiance, got the better of me. My sister stole everything from me and turned our family against me. The username was generic, but the phrasing, it was textbook Seraphine. The narrative flipped. Now she was the victim. Now I was the jealous sister out for revenge. The comments were brutal. Wow. What kind of person does this to family? Ungrateful much. Can't believe some people will tear down their own blood over a little attention. I almost closed the page. Almost. Then I saw one comment near the bottom. Funny how the receipts always show up when the loud ones overplay their hand. It stopped me cold. It wasn't loud. It wasn't long. But it reminded me I had the receipts. All of them. I didn't waste another second. I pulled up my webcam, kept the room dim, no makeup, no angles, just me. And I spoke, not with anger, not with apology. I placed the printed will in front of me. Read the paragraph aloud, the clause about ownership. I showed the signed page, then screen shared the original curriculum files, the drafts, the timestamps, the side-by-side comparison of her rebranded content, and finally, the emails, the one from her agency, the one from her per team, all with my name scrubbed out. When I finished, I looked directly into the lens. They say silence is strength, I said quietly. But sometimes, truth needs a voice. This is mine. I didn't add music, no dramatic cut. I didn't ask for support or sympathy. I just clicked upload and let it go. Within 2 hours, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Old clients shared the video. This woman helped my son pass his GED. She worked with my daughter when no one else would. She's the reason my kid got into college. A teacher I'd collaborated with reposted my slides. A blogger I'd never met stitched the video on TikTok, praising the calm clarity. Even the Reddit moderators took action, labeling the original thread a misrepresentation and locking the comments. Something was shifting, slowly but undeniably. Late that night, I got a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was low, not performative, just tired. We're sorry, not for everything. Maybe not yet, but for now, for letting it happen. You didn't deserve that, Odell. She didn't ask me to call back, and I didn't. That part of me, the one that wanted to hear those words since I was 9 years old, didn't jump. It didn't reach. It just listened and let it settle. A few hours later, there was a knock on my door. No one I knew had said they were coming. I opened it slowly. A delivery man stood there, holding a small box and a clipboard. Certified, he said. Signature required. I signed, closed the door, sat on the edge of my bed, and peeled back the seal. Inside was a single envelope, legal-sized, cream paper, from Seraphine's lawyer. I opened it and read, Proposed settlement agreement enclosed. Confidentiality required. Full rights and name restoration in exchange for non-disparagement. They were offering a deal, a silent end, a trade. But they were wrong about one thing. Silence didn't protect them anymore. It just bought my answer. The check didn't tremble in my hands. It was heavy, yes. 6 figures worth of forgive and forget. But my fingers stayed steady as I unfolded the NDA behind it. Withdraw all claims. Delete the video. Never speak publicly again. It was the kind of offer that came dressed as resolution but stank of control. I read it twice, once as a woman who had spent too many years second-guessing herself, then again, as the woman I'd become, no longer looking for permission to be heard. And then, I walked to my shredder, slid in the papers, and listened as the blades turned their silence into dust. That afternoon, I posted my final statement. No video this time, just a still image, my name, my credentials, and the words, "You don't owe people silence just because they shared your last name. I won't take hush money for pain I never caused." By nightfall, it was everywhere. Women from all over, former educators, daughters who'd been gaslit out of inheritances, sisters who knew the sting of being scapegoated, began sharing it. Not for sympathy, but because it named something they couldn't say themselves. One message read, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." In my new home office, where I no longer needed to ask for a chair at the table, I hung the wrinkled paper I'd carried since that motel room. "You will build what no one sees today." It rested beside the official letter from my lawyer. Ownership affirmed. IP registered. Curriculum protected. The desk was modest. The window overlooked a bus stop, but it was mine. I haven't heard from my family since, not on birthdays, not when Seraphine's site was permanently shut down, not when word spread that Mom had quietly sold the house. Some said it was to cover the legal fallout. Others whispered she just had enough. But I didn't wait for gossip. I didn't need apologies printed in ink or whispered through other people's mouths. They weren't monsters, just people who made me wrong when it was easier than looking in the mirror. I didn't fight to punish them. I fought to free myself. And freedom, it's quieter than I imagined, but not empty. Last month, I launched a small scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. Nothing flashy, just enough to help kids like the ones I used to tutor when I barely had rent money. Thank you notes started coming in. Most were from strangers. One was from a student I taught back when I was working out of the public library. "You were the first one who told me I could do it. I believed you." I sat with that letter for a long time, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. This was the life I built in the silence they once thought would bury me. A few days ago, I printed a second copy of my grandmother's note. I folded it into an envelope. No return address, no message, just those words, "You will build what no one sees today." I mailed it to a girl I once tutored, who'd quietly told me her parents thought she was too much, who'd been told to stop dreaming so loud, because maybe one day, she'll find herself alone in a motel room. And maybe those words will do for her what they did for me. Have you ever stopped chasing the apology that never came and realized peace was the real closure? Have you ever been erased by your own family and still found the strength to build something lasting? Share your story below.